Greetings and welcome to Dance Afrikana Dance Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lindi. Powered by Dance Afrikana Dance Podcast highlights the African dance tradition from Houston, Texas to the African continent. Its episodes specifically celebrate Black dance artists of the past, present, and future, the history of Black dance in Texas, and African and diasporic dances from around the globe. Our Black Dance in Texas episodes are also a part of a larger oral history project to document the history of Black dance in the region. On today's episode, which I'm extremely excited about, we'll be discussing Black dance in Houston. And our guest today will be sharing information about two of the most important Black dance and dance institutions in the city as a whole. We're joined by our two amazing guests, Mama Lindi Yeni, or Miss Yeni, and Miss Phaedra Vaughner. Mama Lindi Yeni, a native of Pietermaritzburg, South Africa, is a multi-talented artist who calls Houston, Texas her home. Her story is full of fascinating twists and turns that landed her in Houston, Texas, where she eventually co-founded Kumba House in 1982. She lived in several African countries before settling in the U.S. In 1982, she co-founded Kumba House, an arts organization that presented and produced dance, theater, and other African-centered art forms. For over 25 years, Kumba House Dance Theater toured to numerous cities in the United States and Mexico. Miss Yeni's consistency and persistence introduced South African culture to diverse communities of different ethnicities. We're also joined by Miss Eileen Vaughner, who is the owner of Mission Sachet Dance, which is a pop-up dance studio specializing in the foundations of dance styles. She's a native of Houston, Texas, and was classically trained at the Bowie School of Dance and Theater Arts. She's a graduate of Houston's High School for Performing and Visual Arts, HSPVA, and an alum of Texas Southern University. Her vision for Mission Sachet Dance is to enhance its community through dance and fine arts, to develop body, mind, spirit, and with the notion that dance has no walls. Everyone who has a passion for dance can and must be empowered. So again, I'm really honored to have you both here. Very excited to have you here. And I'm looking forward to, getting started to jump into this conversation. And I want to say before we get into it, Mama Yeni is one of my teachers. And when her bio says that she introduced and she really cultivated South African culture here in Houston. I mean, this is completely accurate, right? And then also Miss Phaedra, who was a very, very important person for Bowie Dance Studio. And also Sally Daniels was actually one of my first dance teachers. So Bowie Daniels, who was the founder of that studio and theater, was my first dance teacher formally. So really, really excited to have you both here. Both of these places were an important part of Third Ward, the community that I grew up in, that I still live in. And it's truly just awesome to have you here. So let's get started. Okay, so I want to start with Miss Phaedra. So I want you to tell us about the studio first and foremost and how it was created. I know that you were very close with Miss Sally Daniels, and talk about when and how and why it was created.
So Mrs. Daniels, affectionately, many of us called her Miss D. Many of our students called her Miss D. But she was a graduate of Juilliard, and what happened was she told me this. You're right, we were very close. She was actually asked to be a prima ballerina in Paris by a man by the name of Anthony Tudor. So if you're in the ballet world, you know who that is. So he is equal to, people know Ben Stevenson here. Well, he is known all across the world. Anthony Tudor was known all across the world. And she was his muse. She was his Lauren Anderson. And she was asked to go there, but her parents asked her to come home and to teach those of us who were Black at a time where um, Houston Ballet was not accepting us. Houston Ballet was not teaching us in the Third Ward area. And so she came home. She turned down that wonderful career to come home and teach us in the Third Ward area. Her parents built the studio for her, and she began to teach us somewhere around 1957, 58.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it's important that we talk about the reasons behind the founding, and we're going to shift over to Mama Lindi in a second. The reasons behind the founding of these institutions, because we do know that for a long time, right, we didn't have access to the Western institutions, you know, and that's across the board, whether that's universities, whether that's arts and culture institution, whether that's public facilities. And so I think it's important. And then also, even when we did have access, right, and I want to shift to Kuumba House for a second, because even when we did to Kuumba House, even when we did have access, why was it still important for a place like Kuumba House to be created, right, to be founded, with the fact that, you know, in the 80s, somebody could have at that point gone to Houston Ballet, but why did you feel like it was important enough, right? Let's talk about that.
Okay. I came to the United States in 1973, and I went to Spelman College. And when I was at Spelman, I was a part of the Spelman dance group, which when you get to a certain level in dance, then you can join the Atlanta University Dance Theater. And at the end of the semester, we would be encouraged to choreograph. And I choreographed a dance, an African dance, and used a couple of drummers from across the street, Morehouse. And it was a dance story. And I actually knew nothing about the fact that the importance of this concert, the final concert. There was a critic in the audience, and somehow my piece ended up in the newspaper with a glowing review. And one of my professors said, Miss Yeni, I think you need to think about going into dance professionally. I didn't go to Spelman to be a dancer. My parents sent me there so I could go to law school eventually. So that got me started. And then was introduced into the dance communities of Atlanta, which I found to be, well, they were good, but they were not very open to other people coming in. And when I moved to Houston, I found this city almost totally void of African dance. So it was as if I had been sent here to do what I was trying to do in Atlanta, but was not going in because what I was offering was different from what they knew. And so I came in, and so this was in 1976 when I came. And so that laid the groundwork. When people started seeing what I was doing, they were interested. And I was working out of Shape Community Center, which is a very, very popular center and African center. So it was a symbiotic relationship between Shape Center and what I was doing. I was teaching teenagers their dance and the community. And eventually I started seeing that I was outgrowing Shape Center. So then Kuumba House was the next phase, to actually have a place that people come to for dance lessons for themselves, for their children, and then the performances. So that's how Kuumba House came about. Not just dance, but also theater. So that's how we came about.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't know a lot of that backstory. And it's so I agree. Like, I got, to be honest, when I do my podcast, because of the type of guests I have, I it's not abnormal for me to get emotional. But that really just it was just something about what you said where you felt that you needed to bring in Houston to bring what we didn't have at that point. And that just, I don't know, that's a spirit, and it's just really powerful that you took that calling, as did Miss Sally, who took the calling when could have been in France, and a lot of, and not that me being an Afrocentric person, I don't put France on a pedestal, let's be clear. But as a ballerina, as somebody that's in the ballet field, that is like the top of the top, to be performing in France or Italy or Russia. So for her to be invited as a Black woman at that time, especially to be performing in France, that's a big deal. And for her to say, no, Houston. So there's a theme of there being a calling to this particular city and to do that particular work. And and I'm just thankful that y'all, that they, like, she took the call and that you took the call. Because honestly,
I'd like to add something. So I was a teen by the time Kuumba House was out. I mean, I knew it was going on at Shape Center, but I was over at Bowie Studio. And before you came, pre-75, she was having to do it by herself. So we were having African lessons and theater lessons and music lessons, and she made a girl group out of about 5 of us, and we went around the town singing. She was having to do it by herself. But I remember when Kuumba House came on the scene, and it was so refreshing to me as a dancer that our whole experience as Black people was now being shown here in Houston. So I love all type of dance and can do all type of dance because that's what she instilled in me. But my favorite is ballet. But I knew that as a youngster, I knew that I had a place to go that was going to let me dance the way of my heritage. That was so important. That was like profound for a youngster to be able to know that existed. So it was profound that she was creating a ballet space for people who look like me. But it was also profound that there was another place where it was all about my African culture, and that it was all about showing everybody that we are a diverse people.
Absolutely. I mean, at Kuumba House, we definitely taught all dance forms, because I have the ballet and jazz and modern backgrounds. So I felt that once we moved to Kuumba House and we're just a dance studio, a place where you could come and learn dance. We were even teaching tap. As I said earlier, my sons took their tap lessons from Miss D. They used to call her Miss D, and I used to call her Sam, of course, And that once they knew tap, it was so much easier for them to learn gumboot dance, they could see that gumbo dance was actually a form of tap dance, and how African culture just goes back and forth. And then, of course, I would talk to them about even the drumming. This is how jazz became jazz, because we are syncopated people, and so syncopation in tap, syncopation in jazz, in drumming, it was absolutely. So my sons still love tap dancing, boot dancing, and jazz.
Uh,
Because we were open to teaching all forms, and then also teaching them where the root of what they're doing comes from.
I even
Absolutely.
today
So
took
these are
that
some of the things that
lesson.
Sally and I used to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Say that
took
again.
that
I'm sorry, Phaedra.
lesson. I took that lesson into my world because I find
Yeah.
myself when I'm teaching my youngsters, um, so I will teach ballet and I will teach modern,
Mm-hmm.
but then I will say,
Mm-hmm.
let me show you something else that's modern. And they go, no, that's hip hop. And I said, well, it's modern, but it's not modern.
Yes.
Let me show you how
Mm-hmm.
it really has its roots in Africa. And we talk about
Yes.
all of
Yes.
that, and they have to know that if they're with me, like they, because I'm big on the foundation, so they have to know when they take dance from me that this is where this really comes from. You have to know your dance history
Exactly.
and understand that African dance has its roots in so many styles of how we dance today.
Exactly.
including ballet.
Exactly.
Including ballet.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes,
And acrobatics are part of dance. And one of the things that drew a lot of parents to Umba House was for them to finally have a place. I'm sure Phaedra would attest to this, including Sally's studio, where our body form was accepted. It was not an anomaly. It was not, wow, what are we to do with this person with this shape? You know, a woman is shaped in a certain way and is just to be used the way it is. And our guys also are shaped in a certain way, and it can be used in that format, without saying you need to look like this, you need to look like that. You look fine. You are good where you are. The only thing that we would stress then is your body is okay. Now, when you are doing ballet, this is where it should be. When you're doing African, this is where we should be. So we crouch for African, we pull up for ballet, that kind of thing. So, but that doesn't mean that you've got to stop eating just in order to dance. No, that's not the way we would look
yeah,
at it.
right. So that was the wonderful thing about coming from her school and then entering the so-called quote unquote normal dance world, right? Was
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
because there was a fight and I want to say a verbal, mental kind of
Mm.
flow that went with I wasn't structured a certain
mm,
way, right?
mm,
I wasn't
mm,
structured a certain way because
Mm.
of the region in which my ancestors came. I would have been structured a certain this way, right?
mm,
And
mm.
so there was always this constant nagging at me once I came out of Miss Daniels' world, Miss D's world, and went into this so-called normal dance world for a ballerina.
Mm.
Uh, I was always told, but I
Mm.
had a strength. I had a strength of mind because, when I came in, stepped into this new world that wasn't cradled by Miss D, I was
Yeah.
very strong, mentally. I was strong mentally because, as we say on that podcast that I did with shared with you, we were some of the first Black children, girls who were dancing on point with all of this shape that isn't supposed to be for ballet. All of this body type that's not supposed to be for ballet. We were doing it on point.
Yes.
Like they were doing it somewhere else. And so I was really made to be strong. We have some of my friends from that era, we have this thing where one of them coined it afros and toe shoes. Because we could wear our afros, we could wear our afro puffs, we could be, Black power, whatever, but we were dancing on point and, twirling or whatever you want to call it, doing our shenanigans, and all because here she was saying, you're going to be who you are regardless.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
And that what you're saying, that gave you the not only, well, it gave you the foundation first and foremost, but it also gave you the confidence, the confidence in who you are and your identity and your upbringing and your culture to go out and be anywhere in the world, regardless of what you're faced with. And that's something only these type of places could have cultivated. You can't get that outside of that, And so when I think about all the people who came through both, I mean, first of all, I wouldn't, I learned from both of these people. So let's be clear. But all the people who came through there, even if it was a class or if it was something long term, just think about how transformational that is, to be reflected, to be represented in that way, and to be really celebrated and not made to minimize. I mean, I grew up going to a lot of different dance studios, and I know for me, and even when I studied dance in college, you had those teachers. I remember specifically being told to tuck my butt in, when I'm doing a plie, and I'm like, I'm in the proper form.
Exactly.
I'm in the proper form. There's nothing else I can do.
Exactly.
My butt is, I don't, like my daddy would say, a onyon. I don't have a onyon. My butt ain't that big. But it was just the fact that because I was Black, I was actually really more so being picked on. It was less of, I'm not in the right form or my butt is just huge. It's, no, you're a Black girl and I'm trying to find something to do, picking on you. And of course I reported that particular teacher. But having to deal with those types of things. And so I want to transition a little bit to talk about, in terms of moving to Kumba House a little bit for a second, talking about what you taught. So I know you've covered a little bit about what you've taught from African dance, and you mentioned also teaching ballet and other forms, jazz and things like that. So what other things that you teach, including the theater, to the community?
Okay, when it comes to the dance forms that, besides, as I said, ballet, standard ballet classes, because they need to know that, modern and jazz and tap, what I emphasized was, I was in Atlanta, that the popular form, African dance form, to them meant West African dance.
That's exactly what I was getting at. That's why I asked you this question.
Yes, it was West African dance. And the West African dance was mostly Nigerian, which came with oh gosh, how can I forget him? Olatunji. Yes, came with Olatunji. And Olatunji himself was not really a dancer, but he had women in his band who were teaching. Okay. This was much later when I said, well, I need to learn West African dance, Then when I started enrolling in Senegalese dance and what you call it, Ghanaian dance forms. That's when I could tell, okay, I could differentiate between Senegalese, Senegalese, Ghanaian, and Nigerian. And now, granted, every country has different styles depending on the people, okay? But there is also always something that's it's pretty much goes through all the styles. You can tell, okay, this is Nigerian, more Nigerian, and this is Senegalese. And I started really loving Senegalese dance. And when I started loving Senegalese dance, when I started Kuumba House, I brought in some people who would teach that, because I said, okay, it seems like this is a popular dance form, okay? But then I sat there one day and yeah, this is wonderful. I'm teaching about other people's dance. What about mine? My biggest problem, my biggest challenge with my dance form is that it's not easy to drum to South African dance. And then if I myself were not a drummer, yeah, for me to teach how to drum it was such a challenge. So I had to teach myself how to drum so that I could teach South African dance. And then I could then talk about to my students about the difference between the Senegalese they just finished for 6 weeks, and now we're introducing South African for the next 6 weeks. And the next following 6 weeks we'll be doing Ghanaian. So that was the big challenge. And then I saw that, yes, even though the West African type dances were really popular, the South African dance forms were popular too. So I'm like, I'm comfortable just throwing it in there, throwing it out there. I'm not going to make any excuses about it. So that's how we became different from everybody else. Even dance troupes that did come in to do performances, we would be called to come in and at least do one South African dance workshop. And then, so by the time the Ipitombi dancers came here in it was in late 70s and early 80s, the people that I had been teaching already, this is what you've been teaching us. Look at it. I said, yeah, that's theater. Okay. It's very theatrical. And, but the fundamentals of South African dance. So that show helped Kuumba House go to the top, because they could find now a place where they could learn that type of dancing. So that's how that helped Kuumba House. So by the time we transferred from Shape to our own space, people were like, we've been waiting to do this. We've been waiting to do this. So yeah, African dance forms are not monolithic. People
Very
need
true.
to understand that. And then the different uses often, some dances are danced for the birth of a child, naming of a child. Some are for a war dance and
Harvest.
so on and so forth.
Mhm.
Yes, so yeah. And of course, today in the 2000s, you have in South Africa what is called Amapiano, which
Right.
is yes, so you can see the African basics, but then they've got a lot of the hip hop put in it, but you can still tell the difference between the South African hip hop and the American hip hop. Mm-hmm.
And
So,
no, first of all, go ahead. Were you finished? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I was gonna say thank you for sharing that. And I'm just glad you just followed the calling to do that. To really introduce that to the city. Because like you said, a lot of us, and I want to take it a little bit beyond dance and just arts in general. A lot of us, are told in terms of ancestrally, because the majority of us have West African roots going back to, the European slave trade. But there are some of us because we don't understand the migration patterns of ancient Africa. We don't know we also have roots from people who are Zulu and Xhosa. That is also probable. It's not just West Africa. So you're actually, by doing that, people are tapping in to something that's also ancestral. It's not just another African dance form. Just as they could do with Nigerian dance, just as they can do with Senegalese dance. And I think that's so revolutionary that you thought enough of your own culture, enough of your own people, and to connect those dots. Because if I don't know if you've seen people who take those DNA tests, a lot of them will say that they have Southern African roots. A lot of them say that for Black Americans say that. So this is also our roots, right? So it's important that we understand those connections and also can see how African dance manifests itself differently in wherever you are, right? Because I'm thinking about Sabar because I've been traveling to Senegal the last few years studying Sabar, and it's a whole different kind of thing, right? And when I just think about the Zulu kicks that we used to have us doing, and woo, and you're like, no, do it like this. But it's
straighten that knee,
straighten that leg. I'm like, Lord, but it's all so important. So thank you just for that, for seeing enough, realizing how important it was, even though it was not necessarily something that you thought, would have been popular, and then seeing how people connected with it. Because honestly, it's not just it's popular just because it's popular because people connected with it. Because I know that when I hear those rhythms, sometimes I feel more connected to those rhythms than I do from a rhythm from Guinea. And I'm just being honest. I feel a different level of connection. So you offered this other opportunity, which I think is so important. Thank you so much for that. And so I want to shift back over to the legacy of Ms. Daniels in Third Ward. And so going back to similar to the question I asked Mama Lindi, and I'm calling her Mama Lindi because she was my teacher. So I just want to be clear. This is also Ms. Yeni, right? But I want to talk about Ms. Daniels and the types of dance that she taught, as well as the theater. Because I know you mentioned, and when I was going to her, it was in the later years of the studio, and I was very young. I think I was like 3 to 5. So I don't have much recollection of it, but I do remember the reason why I started going was because my sister was going, and my sister's 4 years older than me. So my sister was actually enrolled, and I remember my mom, we would just kind of sit on the side or like right outside of the dancing area. It's kind of hard to like visualize now, but I remember, well, at least this one particular time, I was kind of just waiting around, and my sister was in class, and Ms. Daniels told me to get into the class. She was like, "No, you can't. You're not supposed to be waiting around. Like, get into class." And it's right basically right off both of the places were right by TSU's campuses. Well, I guess technically like on them, to be honest. But anyway, so I remember that, and I probably was 3. So that's why it's so vague of a memory. But I remember ballet in particular, and I do actually remember. I think I remember maybe doing some jazz, but it's been like clearly like literally 30 years. I'm 33 now, so it's been a while. But anyway, can you tell me a little bit more about what you all learned, especially you as a student going through the program?
So we learned ballet. We learned modern, specifically Graham.
Okay.
We did learn a little bit of Lamont modern, but specifically Graham, because that was her favorite.
The contraction.
Yeah, the contraction. The contraction.
Mm-hmm.
We learned tap. And I remember, it was so funny. I remember my sister, who's 7 years my junior, but my sister was great at tap. I was too. I just didn't like it. My sister loved it. I didn't like it because of the noise. It was noisy to me. It hurt my ears. So I can see her as if it was yesterday, like today. Like I can see her standing in that corner saying, Phaedra Vaughner, get on the balls of your foot and do that tap. And, and I would, yes, ma'am. Because I didn't particularly like tap, but we did tap. And I was good at it, but I just didn't particularly like it.
It is there's a certain sound, yeah.
Yeah, it's a certain noise factor.
Mm-hmm.
And then we did African dance, West African, and that was because her family, she had family that was West African. You probably remember her sister, Miss Lindi, Albertine, and her sister had married into an African family. And so we learned West African. But then she also taught voice lessons for singing. And I'm going to call it speech class, because we had to learn how to speak well. You had to be able to speak well. We also learned quite a bit of backstage tech kind of stuff, the stuff that runs behind the stage. So lighting, props, all of that, we had to learn that. And we participated in carrying the props from one place to the other as we went all around town.
Mama Lindi, that sounds familiar.
I was actually encouraged to do, back then we had reel-to-reel tapes. We didn't have the cassette tape. We didn't have the CD. We had the reel-to-reel tapes. And I was encouraged to learn to splice our music together. I began to help her put our music together for our performances. So, one song would go into the other. It's yesteryear's editing.
Not yesteryear.
Yesteryear. And that skill set actually translated over into HSPVA, because I let it be known that I had that skill set. And so I ended up doing a lot of that at HSPVA as well. So you had the singing, and then you had the acting, because she would put on full on ballet. So we did Petrushka, and one of her sons was actually Petrushka.
Wow.
Right. So there was acting classes too, and she brought in all these fabulous people to assist with all of that. So we had to learn to do our makeup. Once you got a certain age, you learned to do your makeup, and you got classes from one of her friends who taught you the makeup. Like, she taught us the full spectrum of putting on a show. Taught us the full spectrum of classes, like everything, every part that went with that. With each part of it, you learned everything that went with that. Um, I don't think I'm leaving anything out. Like, people call her studio a dance studio, but it was actually called Sally Bowie's School of Dance and Theater Arts.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of time there where she had the stage. I know you remember the stage there, and we would get on the stage and we would actually walk through our performances. I could read music because I went to when I got into my teens, I went to what was just starting back then, the Summer Jazz Workshop with Conrad Johnson. And so I could read music. So she encouraged me to write my own score and then create the dance for the music. So
Wow.
she would look at any type of skill or wherever we were going toward, and then she would create it. She would help you create it. She would help you learn how to do it. She would help you cultivate it.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
and I wanna that I mean, whew, you said a lot, and I'm glad you
So
said
sorry.
class. No. I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying that
Oh,
in like that is amazing that all those things were taking place. And what I'm saying, you said a lot. I'm saying that she did a lot. You all did a lot. That is comparable to what people do in college. That's what you do when you have, because even me, I studied dance at U of H, University of Houston. That's the classes we took:
mhm,
choreography.
mhm,
We took improvisation. We took not choreography, composition, which is essentially choreography. We took production, like
mhm,
but that she understood the importance of cultivating that in you all. You didn't have to like wait until you got to college or to PVA. You already had that, and you were well rounded, and that's something that I see, to be honest, less and less of with dance. And I know you all were both more than dance, right? But that's what I see less and less of is the cultivation of the full individual to be able to speak. I want to also bring it back over to Mama Lindi, because as you were saying that, I'm thinking about things that I know that she does as well, very similar. And I remember you were teaching us a song, and to perform with the dance, and you were like, "No, sing it, sing it," because the thing is, I think it was in Zulu, and we didn't really speak Zulu, so we were trying to sing the actual Zulu words, but that doesn't mean that you actually stopped singing correctly. And so we were like, like we were just like, it was nasally, it was in the throat. It wasn't how you should be singing, right? Like for your diaphragm and all that. So anyway, she was like, "No, sing it." So like we were getting these additional lessons. It wasn't just the dance. You're actually cultivating well-rounded individuals that can go out and do, if they choose to be in the field of arts, that or something else. But I want to ask Mama Lindy also, why is it so important, or why? Because I think y'all could both agree with this. Why was it so important for you to do more than that? Like for you to talk about the whole artistic individual, but the whole individual period. Why is that so important? Or was it so important for you?
Just to add to what Phaedra said, Um, I'm going to just I'm answering your question, but I'm going to start with uh just a little bit back a little bit. One of the things that I found very useful and I was adamant to do. I was working with young people at CUNY homes and what's the fourth ward, the place, anyway, those so-called housing projects.
Lincoln Center. Mm-hmm.
Not Lincoln Center, but the one that's near fourth ward, by the oh,
I
it's
think I know
CUNY
what you're
home.
talking about, but I can't think of the name.
Allen Parkway. Allen Parkway. Allen Parkway.
Oh, Allen Parkway. Okay.
So, by the time I got to Kuumba House, I had already started certain things with these young people. So, for example, in summertime, they had nothing to do. One of the ideas that I got, and being that they really loved ballet because I was teaching, I felt that teaching them ballet first was important for discipline. Okay. I went to the Houston Ballet and I spoke with the principal there. And she, when you don't know who to talk to, you talk to the first person you see. And she said, I will ask so and so what we can do to help these young people. So they actually called me back, and I was pleasantly surprised that the summer was coming up and that they had money and they didn't know what to do with the money. So now these students would actually be enrolled in with the money that they got in the Houston Ballet for the summer program. So they actually were there for 6 weeks. Okay, well, yeah, it was once a week, but it was they were looking forward to going there to Houston Ballet for 6 weeks to study ballet with other kids who didn't look like them. So now coming back again, talking about the summer, by the time we started Kuumba House, there was a program in the city. I don't know, Phaedra, if you knew about this. It was called CETA, CETA. I don't even remember what it stands for. So again, thinking about getting youth off the streets, okay, bringing them in so they can do some constructive. We told the youth, fill out this form, we'll take it to the city. You're going to get a job for the summer. It wasn't a lot of money, but we're in Kuumba House all day long. And then they come and they bring them lunch as well. So we knew that we got these 20 kids who are not out there in the streets doing whatever. Those were the ones we said they're going to learn how to write a script or a poem, learn how to recite it with clear diction, learn how to put a production, learn lighting and sound, all the things that you're talking about, Phaedra. And they are going to be there. And the young ones are going to see what these older ones did. And the young ones would learn one or two dances, one or two poems, and then we would have this big production for the parents to come and see. So those were the things that we made sure that our young people do. So our summer programs consisted of you learn all the phases of theater and dance. You, after 6 weeks being here for the summer, you're going to put on a production with costumes that some of them made themselves, some of them we know how to go out there and find things, and this is how we put it in their psyche and in their soul that theater is not just turn the TV and it's all out there, but you create. Creation is of a production is backstage, middle, and front stage. So this is what we're doing at Kuumba House. All phases of the theater, and we continued to do that. And the importance of, say, when you are okay, we had a pianist who would come, who would teach them what notes are, so that when they have to sing a song, they would sing it in proper tune, get the right voice for, and the key, the right key. And this is why it was so important for you all to learn. What? Okay, all right. And it's got to be sung right. People shouldn't be saying, that doesn't sound African, as I always joke. It doesn't sound you have to sound authentic when you do something, just like every character has to sound and look, talk, walk like whatever the character that you have auditioned for. It cannot be, well, I cannot do that, but I'll do it this way. No, just.
May I add something to what
Yes,
she
please.
as a student, Miss Lindi, I have to applaud you and Miss D, Miss Bowie, for creating opportunities. Creating opportunities. You both did what you did in your way, different yet the same.
Yeah.
But you created opportunities. And what I mean specifically by that is I didn't know until I was older, because she became my mentor. She became my mama Sally. Okay. You know, to the day she passed away, we were thick as thieves. And so I didn't know until those later years that she the whole while was creating opportunities for us in silence. She wouldn't necessarily tell us. She would say things like, Phaedra Vaughner, you need to go over here and do this, whatever it was. And so because I loved her so much, and I trusted her, I would say, yes, ma'am. And I would go do that. And when I got there, the door was relatively open. I had to work, but the door was relatively open.
Mm.
And so I found out later that she would do that. She would think of her students, and she would have these pockets of things she did behind the scenes to create those opportunities. So
Mm.
you had CETA, yes, which was a wonderful program. But then you had her doing things like that. She'd go behind and she'd talk about her student, and she'd make a plan, and then she'd send you there to work to get it. You had to work to get it. But once you got there, you were open, they were already open to hearing you.
Wow.
So, and I didn't know that until much, much later, as we would talk, and she would talk about different students. And the fact that she kept up with all of us,
Mm.
she knew what all of us were doing as we went into adult life. And we made sure she knew. Like, we would write her letters, or we would call her up, or, you know, she was our teacher for a lifetime.
I was just saying that
Perfect.
staying connected has been very important for most of the students that I taught. What they did learn, especially the ones who stayed, who came every summer, and then eventually became what we called, okay, the Kumba Kids. So as we were getting professional with the professional dancers, we eventually saw that we need to teach our young people what professional dancing is, what being a professional in the arts is. And so we formed the Kumba Kids, and they they learned that the once a week thing wasn't going to get it if they're going to look as good as we wanted them. So their parents and them worked really hard to get those kids to be there twice during the week and 3 hours on Saturdays. That's a lot of time. So the 1 hour a week, 1 hour a week, the 2 hours a week was learning your basics. And then you come the 3 hours on a Saturday, you're now learning your craft. Okay. So those kids became a community. And to this day, they are what do you call Facebook? Got to think about these things. Facebook friends. They invite each other to their children's uh, births and what do you call the thing where before you the baby gets born? The baby showers. I have to think about it. Phaedra, I'm not as young as I used to be, girl. Baby showers. They meet at certain places at certain times. They are still together. Friendship formed. Now, one of the things that I am really proud about is that even though we taught them theater and dance, they understood that was the discipline that taught them that. Most of them are not really in the field anymore, but they're still using the discipline that they learned. We we've got corporate people, business people, and mothers, and phenomenal mothers and phenomenal dads. So that was the whole. We have whole human beings. Isn't that what you are, Phaedra? A whole human being. Because
It is, Mama Linda. You're right.
That's the key.
exactly the we laid the foundation, and as long as you stay on the foundation of the principles that we were teaching you, everything is going to be okay. Okay, that's all I wanted to say about that.
So I'd like to expand on because that is what a few of my friends and I were talking about. You heard it, Lindsay. We we talked about that discipline that we took and went into every walk of life. We went into quite actually every walk of life with that discipline, with that organization, with that detail, with that understanding of how to start a project from A to Z. We went from every walk of life. I had another conversation with a young lady who wasn't on that call, but she became she went into politics, and she was part of the Clinton staff. She became a strategist, political strategist, and she is still doing that work today. And she came into town to see about her mother. And I said, girl, we haven't seen each other in so long. We need to stop and see each other just for a second. She said, you know, right, you're right. And even she sat down and said the same thing. And she said, we haven't seen each other in a long time, but you see how we just got right back into how we were. And I said, yes. And then, we caught up on everything with each other's lives or whatever. And the people in the place where we were in the restaurant, they were like, "Are y'all sisters?" And we looked at each other and we laughed and we said, "Yes, we sisters. We came from the same mama, which was Miss D."
Mm.
We both we had different mamas, but we it was a family, and it wasn't a dysfunctional family.
Mm.
We had a leader who was able to take us and teach us and then send us out into the world with all of these skill sets behind us that would make us strong individuals. That would make us individuals, period.
Right.
Mhm.
Building character, building leadership. I mean, a whole human being, like Mama Lindy said, and that's the kind of impact. I was actually going to ask you all as like kind of an ending question about um, what is the legacy? What is the impact? And I think that really is it. I mean, because when you talk about, Black dance, this is beyond Black dance. You're uplifting, because when you're uplifting children, you're uplifting parents, you're uplifting an entire community and people that are going to go out and do things that you can't even imagine, you can't even foresee, and then imagine their children and so on and so forth. So it's truly literally, I hate to say cliche, but it's the gift that keeps on giving, and that's a
Amen.
gift, and that's what you provided. And so we're gonna wrap up in a second, and I want to just ask if you can kind of summarize really quickly for time, just a final thought that you want to share, Mama Lindy, and then I'll ask Phaedra if you have anything else as well. But just a final thought on the legacy of Kumba House to Black dance in Houston.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. And I would start by just saying that the legacy of Kuumba House, I'm looking at it right now, and it's called Lindsay Gary right now. And to know that you're working with a young lady one day, and a few, not a few months or a few years later, she says, "I am now PhD, Dr. Lindsay Gary." I'm like, okay. So my work wasn't wasted. And Lindsay, there are other young people who did the same thing that you did. They went on to take more classes in college, and they've graduated to to other things. They're still doing dance. They're still doing dance in their own way, in their own space. I know one young lady who used to come to Kuumba House, and Lori Amar used to work with her. Shani Henderson, she's married now, and I cannot think of her African last name. She's a professor now. Do you see
Joe,
what I'm
you
saying?
talking about Shani Joe?
Yes, yeah. Okay. She used to be Henderson before she got married. Okay. So all of the little Kuumba house that have sprung around the city of Houston, okay, I just feel blessed that the work that I thought I was doing, because I love to do the work and I love to share it with somebody, that it actually got received and has now budded into a big tree with such beautiful fruit. So I am blessed that this is what we are seeing. It wasn't wasted. It wasn't wasted. As I said, no, you may not have ended up doing dance like I would have hoped for you to, but I'm glad that the basics of what we taught you are a lifetime for you. So this is how I just want to end that. all these little Kumba houses out there. I'm so grateful to you all. Thank you.
You gonna have me over here crying. I'm trying to end this with a dry face. Thank you so much. It's an honor. It really is. And for you to be so open to sharing, is something that's invaluable. So just thank you. I'm giving you the biggest hug, and I hope you feel it on
I
your
feel
end.
it. I feel it, Lindsay.
No, thank you so much. And Miss Phaedra, I know you kind of wrapped up a little bit, but did you have anything else you wanted to add about that
Well,
legacy?
I do want to add, I want to call her legacy roots. And why I say that is because of all the things that I said previously, but I want to add something to, because Miss Lindy says something, and so the tentacles stretched far, and the two trees intertwined
Yes,
with
yes.
the roots, because Lori Amar taught my daughter.
She taught me too.
Lori Amar, my daughter was in Lori's class at Gregory Lincoln and became one of the dance in the dance company. Lori did for her also, because by that time Miss Daniels was coming out, had come really, I think had come out. And so Lori did for her. Lori took her over to City Dance, and she was dancing with the junior dance company at City Dance when Lori was there. And she got her scholarships, and she did this and she did that for my baby. My baby got her start, like you said, even my son did, with Miss D. My son was hanging around, and Miss D said, "Get him in here." And she created a whole dance. I think we have to say Native American now. She created a whole Native American dance surrounded by him. But my oldest daughter started there. Miss D came to me and she said, "She's a better dancer than you." I said, "Yes, she is." My daughter was deaf, and so she felt the music differently. And then my daughter met Lori. So that's why I say roots. Because they both, again, I say it again, they both came from different sides of the coin, different sides of the river, with these roots. They implanted and instilled these roots in us that took us far. Roots. That's her legacy. A legacy of love, commitment, and roots.
Wow. Thank you both so much.
We honor Sally for all the work that she did here in Houston. We honor her. We thank her. I loved her very much.
Oh, y'all are making me cry. Oh my God, it's too much.
Yeah. It's mind-boggling to many of us because it seems as if she's understated when she gave so much of herself.
So much. Yes. So much. So much.
Don't worry. We're going to change that. We're going to change that. Seriously. Because it's funny. And when I started my PhD in 2019, I went to Philly. That's why, because I went to Temple. And she was heavy on my heart out of nowhere. I mean, I hadn't, been there in years. And I'm texting my mom. I'm calling Miss Angela Doucette, who was a church member, who I know worked with her. And I'm trying to get in contact with her son. That's when I first started contacting you, Miss Phaedra, too. I don't know if you remember that. And I'm like, how can we uplift this? And I don't know. It just was something in me that was wanting that. And, with the pandemic, that kind of slowed down. But I'm like, trust me, neither one of these legacies will be forgotten in people's hearts. and they will not be understated. Because I know for me, if I got to do it by myself, I don't think I am going to have to do it by myself. I'm going to make sure of it, and that's why I really wanted to do the whole project at the research center, to make sure that this was documented, that this was archived, that this was talked about, that was at the forefront of people's minds, because that's where it belongs. You know, this is an example for all of us, you know, and I'm lucky to have been able to somehow be connected, but it's an example that, you know, people are asking these questions. What can we do? I'm like, we got blueprints. We got blueprints.
Yes. Yes.
You know,
Houston does not know that the pioneer of dance in Houston, I know, of course, we know about Debbie Allen, but the pioneer of dance in Houston was Sally Bowie Daniels.
absolutely. And I believe Debbie Allen went through the studio.
She took class
for a hot
at some point.
For a hot second.
See, I mean, that's
not long, but for a hot second.
A hot second matters. Because we, you know, but we'll talk more off the record in a second about that. But I want to, I really want to thank you guys. I'm emotional. I'm like, how am I supposed to continue my day? Because it's so powerful and beautiful, and I can assure you that, like, I'm appreciative that you shared, and that we now have the space to make this, to just put it more at the forefront. That's all I'm saying. People know, and I think there's a difference between something being unknown and something being understated. And so it's coming. Okay. So I want to thank you again. Phenomenal guest, emotional recording. I feel like I'm more emotional than this.
Yeah, because
that's all right.
I went to something where they dedicated this whole show to just the Black people in Houston, period. Like they crossed all different segments of industries and talked about pioneers in these different industries. So she is more than a 5-minute, PowerPoint presentation.
Like a footnote, more than a footnote.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a tendency sometimes to, now I'm getting emotional, to undervalue our people, especially those who don't come out all the time as divas. There's one thing that Sally wasn't. She was not a diva. She was just a hard worker who loved her people. And that she and I, we are truly together. Our hearts are truly together about that. Being a diva is not as important as just doing everything out of your heart for your people. Just do it. Stop trying to get the accolades. Just get the work done. I'm sorry. I'm done.
No, don't apologize.
And thank you for the roots metaphor, Phaedra. Thank you for the roots metaphor. Because when two trees are side by side, their roots do come together. They do come together, and they're stronger.
Yeah, you could, in her later years, as she was beginning to feel like she couldn't do it anymore, you couldn't beg her to do a news article. She would say no. She had, students coming out of the woodwork saying, come on, we got to get you some publicity. We're going to do this for you. We're going to do that for you. And I would be sitting there watching her say no. And then we'd go to lunch, or we'd, be shopping or whatever together. And I'd say, Miss D, why didn't you want to do that? We could do this, we could do that. And she'd say, no, we're not going to do that, Phaedra Vaughner. I don't do that for all of that. I don't want all of that attention. You know, and she
Mhm.
was she spoke, that's the way she spoke. I don't want all
Mhm.
of that attention.
Mhm.
Very quiet. I don't want all of that attention.
Mhm.
So yeah, I thank you for doing this. I did have apprehensions about this. You know, from the beginning, I kind of had apprehensions, but her son, one of her sons, and one of my good friends said, "You knew her way better than everybody else. Get up and talk." And so, it is with that love that I share that. And like I said, Miss Lindy, the importance of both of you just made those of us who came through you um just better individuals. So thank you too.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you,
Thank you so
Lindsay.
much. Absolutely. It's all I can say is I'm a vessel. That's all I can say. And I want to thank you both again for sharing. Just woo, just thank you. And I want to. I'm like so yeah. It's a lot, and I'm so emotional. But I want you to have if you have a moment to share anything that you may have coming up, or how people can stay in contact with you or connect with you with both of you. Phaedra, would you like to share?
I'm not working on anything currently other than preparing for the girls' recital in August. Um, Dance in all its colors, dream and indulge. But it will be in August um, of this year. And if you want to just kind of stay in touch with me, I'm on all social media platforms. So I'm on TikTok. I let the girls TikTok. Uh, I'm on Instagram. I do Instagram, but I don't do TikTok. I let them do Instagram, do TikTok. And I am on uh, Facebook, and you can visit my webpage. So it's mission, like I'm on a mission, MISSION, Chasse.com. And that's what it is on all social media platforms. So if you just type in mission chasse.com, you'll go straight to my website and you can reach me there, um, and Instagram mostly. So thank you so much again for having me come on and talk with you today.
Thank you. And please connect with her. And then Miss Yeni, how can people connect with you?
They can connect me on email, by email, if they need to know what I'm doing next. And my email address is treeclay247@gmail.com. Tree Clays spelled TRECLAY 247@gmail.com. I can share with you. I don't have any major events or programs coming up, except that I am starting to revive Amasiko, which is the first African ballet that celebrates Kwanzaa, which was premiered in 1999 um, down in the theater district in Houston, Texas. And since my retirement in 2008, it has not been done at that level. And so hopefully by, what is this, 2024, 2025, we will have revived it. And I am writing a musical about the visions of the prophet Zechariah. And it's a musical. So hopefully that also will be ready by 2025. So, you've got time. Thank you again, Lindsay. Thank you, Phaedra, for your presence and sharing so much. Thank you. I can't say anymore.
May I just add one thing? I forgot to talk about my podcast, Dance in All Its Colors. So it's on all the different podcast platforms as well. So it's just Dance in All Its Colors. And it's just about how I see dance in everything that I do.
Okay, cool.
Thank you both so much. And I want to thank our audience again for listening to this very special episode, for watching, for tuning in. And be sure to connect with Dance Afrikana Dance Podcast. You can find us at danceafrikana.com and on our Instagram, Dance Afrikana. And to all my Afrikana people, don't forget to dance.